Motorcycle property damage claims process. We're going to talk about that today, go through all of it so you can be well informed on how to properly handle a motorcycle property damage claim. We're first going to talk about whose insurance do you use for the claim, the at-fault parties or your insurance. Number two, we're going to talk about what rights do you have to what. So we're going to talk about in the repair situation and also in the total loss situation. So you know exactly the methods to use to handle each of those different types of property damage claims in your motorcycle wreck. And stick around to the end, because the third thing I'm going to give you is some tidbits on why adjusters are sometimes very difficult to deal with in these motorcycle property damage claims. But first, let me tell you who I am, and then we'll dive into this. My name's Ted Spalding. I'm a motorcycle trial lawyer. I have been doing this for over 20 years, helping bikers in my home state of Georgia and throughout the country with these cases. I'm also a member of the Georgia Down Biker Fund. It's a charity that helps downed bikers recover after wrecks throughout our state. Hopefully one day we'll become a national organization. So I've got many, many years advocating for motorcycle riders in these cases, both professionally and in my charity work with the Down Biker Fund and other charities. So let's dive into this question. And the first thing I want to tackle is, whose insurance do you use? This is a typical question that I get, and a good one, because the answer is you can use either your own insurance or the at-fault parties. But there's some give and take on when and why you do it. And here's my advice on that. I recommend everyone always go through the at-fault parties insurance first. If you use your insurance, you're going to have a deductible, and you'll get that deductible back long-term when you're not at fault, but you might be out that deductible for up to 6 months. So can you really afford to do that? So I always tell people, try the at-fault party first, because if their insurance will treat you right, then there's no need to have your claim run through your insurance and be out that deductible, even if it's for a couple of weeks. What do I mean by treat you right? Well, oftentimes at the beginning, you're going to hear things like, oh, we have this under investigation, we can't do anything yet, blah, blah, blah. If they are dragging it out, it's taking weeks, and they still have not adjusted your property damage claim, that's too long, and you may want to stop beating your head against a wall and switch to your insurance. And that's fine. Now it's worth the deductible loss for a while, because you don't have a choice. You're just sitting around waiting on the insurance company, and they're dragging their feet. I've seen insurance companies drag their feet for months if you're not quick to move and adjust. So that's the typical barometer. Give it a couple of weeks. Worst case. Now, if you're desperate, if this was your main source of transportation, it may only be a couple of days you can wait because you need to get in a rental, those sorts of things. So each case is a little bit different, but typically if you can withstand it a week or two, see if you can get it worked out with the at-fault. Again, switching to yours, you will be out that deductible for a while, so be prepared for that. Make sure financially you can withstand that loss. You'll get it back eventually once your insurance goes after their insurance company, but it may take quite a while for that to all play out. What rights do you have is the next topic. So there's two situations, repair and total loss. Let's talk about repair first. Here are the things you need to be thinking about with repair of your motorcycle. Should be OEM parts. So if this is a bike that you got from a dealer, it's not custom built, then OEM parts must be used. That's number one. If it's custom, hopefully you kept records. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And you can prove what parts you had used that are basically OEM, if you will, and they should be replaced with those similar ones. They will try to cheap out and use aftermarket parts, cheaper parts to fix your bike because you won't know the difference. Be careful. That's the first part on the repair. Now, the other part on repair is they owe you not only for the repair, full cost to repair the bike back to where it was at before the wreck occurred, but they also owe you diminished value. So be careful. You have 2 property damage claims when it's a repairable damage. Diminished value is just what it says. Now that it's been repaired, you're going to have a Carfax on it. You go to sell it to your riding buddy after the wreck and it's repaired. It has less value now because it has been in a wreck and has been repaired. That difference in value is diminished value. That's what you're owed by the insurance company. So be very mindful of that. Now, I've got other videos on diminished value and things of that nature. Check those out. Diminished value is difficult to handle, but you can get through it and do it. Totaled. Easier because you don't have 2 different claims. You only have 1. And what you're owed is the fair market value of the bike. So what I always tell people is the second before the wreck, what could you have sold it to a friend, neighbor, riding partner for? Mileage, condition, add-ons, everything right before the wreck occurred. That's what you're owed. That is a little bit more difficult sometimes because motorcycle wrecks, motorcycles in general, people don't have as much familiarity with. So do your research. Know exactly what this was worth before the wreck occurred. That is what you're owed for your total loss. Now, if you've got loans on it, things like that, your financier, they are going to be paid first out of the property damage before you get anything. And hopefully you get something. Sometimes you can be upside down. There's all kinds of ins and outs when it comes to that. But total loss, fair market value, you want to fight for that. The last thing and most important thing is, why are these more difficult? Well, it's because adjusters aren't as familiar with motorcycles as they are the value of 4-wheel vehicles. They see those every day. Motorcycles, they don't. So you have some issues, especially when you're talking 2 different things. Use of custom parts, if you did a bunch of adding of custom parts, or if your bike is a custom bike. So, for instance, if you did a frame-up custom job on your bike, building it yourself, or you had someone build it, it's harder to value, right? Again, in a repair situation, you want to make sure you can show them what parts you used. In a total loss situation, even harder. How do you do that when it's custom? This sort of thing. So here's what I recommend that you do, but you got to do it early. So if you are adding a bunch of custom parts to your bike, you want to keep a file of all the receipts for those parts. That way you can immediately show them all this, because it might be years later that this happens. You want to show them exactly what you used, how much it cost at the time, because that increases the value of your bike if you're in a total loss situation. If you're in a repair situation, it lets them know which ones you used. Those should be the replacement parts that are then put on your bike to put it back to where it was before, not aftermarket parts. If you used nice custom parts, show them. So you need to keep records. Now, even more important, if you did a custom bike. So, good example, I had a client who had a custom bobber. So he started frame up. So he bought a frame and created the bike from there. And it's a bobber. Bobbers, they don't see those all the time, even within motorcycles. So now you're talking even less familiarity in this situation. So you got to have all of your documentations. I would take photographs as you're building it, almost like restoring. You want to take photographs of what, as it's being built out, to show it. You want all your part receipts so you can show them. You have got to show them all of these things, because the difference between a nice seat and a cheap seat, you know, if you have bags on the back, if you have, you know, custom handlebars, whatever you do, you need to be able to document this to them. They're not going to know this by looking at the crumpled up motorcycle. And you might lose a lot of value in not having all your documentation. So it's super, super important to do this. And then at the end of the day, you might have to turn to an expert. Now, what expert? And this is typically in the total loss situation. Well, a dealership certainly is easy. If you've got a shop that worked on the bike, if they've got someone that can value it for you, that's a cheaper way to get some experts to tell you what the value is. Ultimately, you might have to hire an appraiser, independent appraiser that will come out, look at all your documentation, and be able to give an opinion officially what the value of your bike was. But these are all the things that you need to do depending on what kind of motorcycle property damage claim you have. I hope this video helps you be able to manage your property damage claim throughout the process. It is unique, but this will hopefully give you those tips that you're often running and can manage this claim and get what you deserve for the damage to your bike. As always, thanks for watching. Check out my other videos. Comment below. Would love to hear from you. Here to answer any questions you have as well. Thank you so much.